You are tuned to the witching hours, and I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. On tonight's episode, I just want to get into the theory: did the world actually end? Whether this be 2012, 2020. I've seen the dates shift around depending on what calendar you're looking at. But did the world that we used to know end? And are we now in another dimension, perhaps? Or did we switch to another timeline? So, what is going on there when it comes to this theory? Well, what got me into researching this was people talking about how, first of all, the Mayan calendar. I know back in 2011, we thought that the world was going to end at midnight on 2012, like as soon as it hits and goes to 2012. And that didn't happen. Um, but, there was that hysteria for a while. People didn't know what to do. Um, so there's speculation that a lot of people think the world actually ended in 2012. And we're now existing in either a purgatory where they're all dead, is another theory. Everybody's actually dead and we're living in hell on earth, or we're living in a form of purgatory. Or because, okay, so here's where this theory comes into play. So Stephen Hawking, I'm not a huge fan of him, to be honest. I don't believe in the Big Bang. But he had a theory that if we were to discover the God particle or recreate it, the God particle, which is basically, it's called the Higgs boson. And at CERN, they were able to recreate it in 2012. And he said if we are to do this, then the world that we know as we know it will cease to exist, or we would get sucked into a black hole or something like this. And if you think about it, they're recreating, allegedly, the theory is they're recreating the same conditions that were there at either what they would view as the Big Bang or the origin of the universe, how the universe came to be. So a billion times a second, we're trying to recreate a Higgs boson. And we're putting particles, we're essentially colliding particles, trying to recreate this hundreds of miles underneath the surface of the Earth in the Hadron Collider at CERN. So, is it possible that by doing this, we could shift everybody to a completely different reality? Is it possible that maybe there's some things in science we really shouldn't be messing around with, and that we don't really understand what it's doing? Maybe because we continuously are recreating what would be the conditions of the origin of existence, that we're resetting it every single time. So maybe this would explain why we have things like the Mandela Effect, where people remember things one way and then thousands of people remember things a completely different way. I started going down the rabbit hole of the Statue of Liberty Mandela Effect. I lived in New York multiple times. I actually traveled on the ferry and saw the Statue of Liberty. I don't recall anybody telling me what island it was on. So, what do you remember the Statue of Liberty being on? If you're from New York, let me know in the comments. But the Mandela effect surrounding this is that some people believe the hand that she's holding the torch in has switched, um, and the island that people believe she was on was Ellis Island as opposed to Liberty Island. So I actually posted online to see just if any of my New York friends what they thought of this Mandela effect. And so far they say it was on Liberty Island. Where you register is Ellis Island. So people are talking about this online, about how um, they claimed that they even went up into the torch, which has been off limits for over a century because in 1916, this was around World War I. It had been going on for 2 years, and there were 2 million tons of ammunition on Black Tom's Island that was detonated, causing damage to the torch. And this was done by Germany. So it caused damage to the torch, which then made it off limits. However, from what I'm seeing online, multiple people claim they went up into the torch of the Statue of Liberty. And there's also people saying that they remember it always being on Ellis Island and not Liberty Island. But if you think about it, the name, even the name Liberty Island, would make more sense, wouldn't it not? So, are we sliding back and forth between realities? And is that why we're seeing the differentiating memories? If it's just a case of like Alzheimer's or just misremembering, why would people misremember it to be the same way? That's what always makes me question it. So the Statue of Liberty is located on Liberty Island, a short distance from Ellis Island. So many people recall it being on Ellis Island. And there's a few clips I'm going to show you guys, and just let me know what you think. So here we see a photo from 1978, the view of the Twin Towers from the Statue of Liberty. In comparison to other photos now, the distance is not as great as in this photo. So if the world was to end like that, would we even be able to be conscious of it? Say it was just something that instantly wipes out the entire world, and you wouldn't even feel it, it was so fast. Or say we got sucked into a black hole, and it took like a millisecond for it to suck us into a black hole, or it would suck us to another dimension. Say that happened, and you're living in a parallel universe, or you're living in purgatory, as others might view it. Would you even realize it happened if it happened so quick and to everybody at the exact same time? Or would you consciously know that the world had ended? I honestly don't know what to think about this. I know in 2012 I was actually had a psilocybin trip with an ex-boyfriend of mine, and this was in December, I believe, of 2012. And I was having a bad trip. And he said it looked like my eyes turned black completely, like an alien with no whites in my eyes. And the energy just felt weird that month. I remember that specifically. It felt very strange to me. And since then, I went through what felt like. So I remember it constantly feeling like I was repeating the same cycles, and I would always end up living in a basement with a horrible landlord that would harass me and make me uncomfortable and things like that. And it was like the same cycles constantly repeated like a nightmare. So I wonder about that theory. Did we all actually die in 2012? And where we're existing now is a completely separate realm. I'm open to the theory of purgatory, and I'm also open to the theory of an alternate dimension. Since 2020, there's been a huge shift. Just in general, since the world went into lockdown, it feels like we're in some other dimension, perhaps. And I'm not the only person that's noticing how different it feels. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Did the world actually end? Or was it symbolic that the world as we know it ended due to the whole COVID crap, right? That's going on. So because of the lockdowns and everything, is it just symbolic of the world as we know it ending? And is that why there's been constant prophecy and talks about the end of the world? Maybe it's not literally the end of the entire world, but it's the end of the world as we know it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. That's it for this episode of The Witching Hours. I'll see you next Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, for another episode of The Witching Hours. I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. Have a great week.